BRICS is a group of emerging countries led by Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. These nations, each with its unique culture, history, and challenges, found common ground in their desire for a more fair global economic system. They've become a disruptor on the global stage as they represent a significant portion of the world's population and resources, creating a powerful group that couldn't be ignored. But what if I told you BRICS was created by accident? Some of the greatest things in this world were created by accident. Things like penicillin, Velcro, and Coca-Cola. The acronym BRIC was originally created in 2001 when an economist wrote a piece titled Building Better Global Economic BRICS, 16 pages providing data and projections as to why the countries of Brazil, Russia, India, and China will expect to see explosive growth over the coming decades. I have to imagine there was no intention of this turning into what it is today, which we'll get into great detail during this video, but the BRIC movement started gaining unexpected momentum. So much so that the leaders of those countries met on the sidelines of the 2006 United Nations General Assembly and eventually held their first official BRIC summit in 2009, with South Africa joining soon after in 2010. In this video, let's discuss 5 key facts about BRICS that could change the global landscape, how their priorities shifted from that first meeting in 2006 to now and years into the future, and how their decisions could impact the economies of the developed world, specifically the United States. Each fact becomes increasingly more important, so make sure to stick around to the end of the video. What does any powerful country need? It's a concept that goes all the way back to the medieval times. It's a concept that has been modernized and even digitized to this day that almost everyone around the world takes part in. It's a concept that eventually became one of the first major collaborations by the BRICS member countries. In 2014, they created their own central bank. Financial structure is important when you have 5 different countries with 5 different priorities, 5 different currencies, and 5 different economic strategies. The BRICS Bank, or New Development Bank as it's called, highlights its goals as helping to finance projects around the world that help build a more inclusive, resilient, and sustainable future. Investing in projects like providing water supply, infrastructure, and sanitation efficiency, which at the surface is all well and good, but don't let this fool you. The main reason for the creation of their central bank is rooted from years and generations worth of hate towards those in the world they believe have been holding them back. And yes, I am mainly referring to the United States and their central bank, the Federal Reserve, who of course are supposed to prioritize the needs of the United States economy, but those decisions have an impact all around the world. Which is a perfect segue into the second BRICS fact. The Federal Reserve has been using the dollar more like a tool at their disposal than a currency. They are able to do this because the dollar is the world's reserve currency and has been for the last century. This means the dollar has been at the center of the world financially, and because of the stability that the dollar provides, it allows the United States 2 key benefits. The first is it becomes an investing juggernaut. Countries around the world have to hold the world reserve currency for international trade, and right now this is called the dollar wallet. Countries use the dollar as a middleman currency for transactions between countries like oil, for example. But countries don't use all the money in their dollar wallet, so instead of just having it sit there, losing purchasing power over time to inflation, the next best thing is to use a large portion of that money to invest in US markets. This of course benefits the US economy, but what if I told you this line of thinking has changed and is one of the main priorities for BRICS? How do you stop an economic juggernaut from continuing an impenetrable cycle? You stop using its currency. The BRICS countries have focused on ways to avoid the dollar as an intermediary currency. Here are some, but certainly not all the examples. Brazil and China had made an agreement to only use their own currencies for trade between the countries, ditching the dollar entirely. Russia, as their dollar assets have been frozen for their attack on Ukraine, have obviously not been using the dollar and have transitioned to mostly using the Chinese yuan. India has made a deal with the United Arab Emirates to pay for all transactions in either the Indian rupee or the UAE dirham, transaction that used to occur in dollars. China's cross-border transactions used to be a majority in dollars, but recently that has changed to their own currency, the yuan. And finally, South Africa. The African nation as a whole has become more aligned. In 2018, 54 member states created the African Continental Free Trade Area, where the main goal was to reduce frictions trading goods and services within the continent. A main focus being traded in, you guessed it, local currencies, reducing the reliance of the dollar yet again. So there is some truth behind the dollar being used less globally, but what if I told you it might not matter because of the next BRICS fact? The world is becoming more digitized, more convenient, with everything available to you at the tip of your fingers. But before we go further, if you like topics like this and want to see more of them, make sure to subscribe to the channel. BRICS is also dipping their toes into the digitized world with their blockchain payment system called BRICS. BRICS is a payment system specifically designed to simplify economic cooperation between the BRICS countries. BRICS could make cross-border transactions much more convenient for those involved. But there are some significant issues with this new system. So let's stay positive and start with the good. Currently, most banking transactions run through SWIFT, which is the system how global banks communicate with each other. When you're sending money from one person to another, as long as the two banks have accounts with each other, they would authenticate the payment request. If the banks don't have a relationship, the SWIFT message would be sent through intermediary banks which have a presence in, you guessed it, the United States, which is why these countries are looking for alternatives. BRICS isn't necessarily going to replace SWIFT, but it gives the BRICS countries more autonomy from the Western system. The second possible benefit to BRICS is it should simplify cross-border transactions. BRICS eliminates the need for intermediary currencies like the dollar, which will reduce transaction costs. Here are some of the obvious roadblocks BRICS is going to have to overcome for this to work, especially in the beginning. With each country having their own regulations when it comes to financial systems and digital currencies, there could be challenges in creating unity with each other on the way to operate going forward. Additionally, BRICS depends on the technological infrastructure of each of these BRICS countries, so disparities and technology adoption and connectivity may hinder its potential. This includes staying up to date with cybersecurity. It's time for the next BRICS fact, which answers the age-old question. Does size really matter? Since its inception in 2009, just one country joined the bloc, that being South Africa in 2010. Since then, the group has built up relationships with every corner of the world. Many of these countries share BRICS' passion on being able to have the same opportunities to that of the Western countries, a hurdle that has plagued them for decades. Throughout the last couple decades, these other countries have felt so strongly about BRICS' long-term goals that they have reached out to BRICS to be a part of their exclusive bloc. While I do believe some of these countries feel like joining BRICS would be like winning the lottery for them, helping them get out of extreme poverty or pay off massive debts, whatever the motivation, the interest is there. There was reporting that as many as 30 or 40 countries wanted to join the BRICS bloc, but again, no new countries have been added since 2010. That is, until recently. At the 15th annual BRICS Summit in 2023, it was announced by BRICS that they invited 6 new countries to the bloc effective January 1st, 2024. And who better to tell you who those countries are than South African President Cyril Ramaphosa.
We have decided to invite the Argentine Republic, the Arab Republic of Egypt, the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, the Islamic Republic of Iran, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates to become full members of BRICS.
That's right. What started as 4 countries, then 5 countries, could now be 11 countries. So I'll ask you again. Does size really matter? Does going from 5 countries to 11 countries actually help the bloc or make things more complex, now having 11 different priorities and 11 different agendas? It all depends how you look at it, but in this case, it was very clear BRICS had 2 main priorities when deciding on who to invite. The first was to try and even the regional power within BRICS. You'll notice right away that no Asian countries were invited to BRICS. That's because China and India are 2 of the largest economies not only within the BRICS bloc, but in the world. So giving that region more influence was unlikely. You'll also notice that Africa gained 2 new entrants, Egypt and Ethiopia. This is because from a global standpoint, South Africa is certainly not considered a powerhouse. So this helps give the African continent more say on a global stage. But the second priority for adding new members is way more important and easily has the biggest impact on the global economy. As the world reserve currency, the dollar has historically been the only allowable currency for oil transactions, as agreements were made between the United States and Saudi Arabia decades ago. But this could all be changing. The additions of Iran, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates to BRICS are because of their massive energy production. BRICS will now have 6 of the top 10 oil producers in the world. It's very clear these additions will help give BRICS a stranglehold on the world's energy supply, which in turn could reduce the need for the dollar in these transactions. So let's do some quick unofficial math. If the dollar predicates itself on being used as the intermediary currency for things like oil transactions, but at the same time, BRICS is reducing its reliance on the dollar and cutting it out of these types of transactions, where does this leave the dollar? We haven't even scratched the surface when it comes to why the world is taking these actions. So check out this video here to dive deeper on why the world hates the dollar.